Good morning and welcome back to the Home Renovation Experts. Steve here on this 5x3 garden room. Coming along nicely. So the plan of action for today is paper barrier. That one is done. I'm going to take this plasterboard that I just brought, stick it on that wall, and then I'm going to get all this stuff shifted over to there, get the vapor barrier on this wall, and then plasterboarded. And then the same for these, get these plasterboarded as well. So basically just kind of carrying on from yesterday really. I'll get all these joints scrim taped everywhere, which is going to be very nice. In case you don't know what scrim tape is, I have some right here. So I picked this up from Wix. I don't know how much it was, but it was not expensive. Always use it, never not use it. It just keeps your joints nice and tight and together and just stops them from opening up and cracking and popping as well, which is absolutely beautiful. I also do the corners as well. I'll show you that once I've done it, because it just stops this gap from here cracking open. You're always going to get gaps and cracks in these builds just because of the nature they are timber frame. They expand and contract. They're breathing. So yeah, you're always going to get a bit of movement. So, but this just helps to minimize it. So, and it doesn't take long to do. So, perfect. Right, that is it. I'm going to crack on now. Well, once I've finished this cup of tea, then I'm going to crack on. Tea first, always tea first. And action. Hello, right, so you've got leftover bits of plasterboard, okay, because you're doing like the smaller bits and pieces. This is a nice little tip, makes life a bit easier. So you kind of think, oh, you've got a measure there, a measure there, and I've got to cut it. Absolutely you can grab your small piece and do it, or you can do it as I like to call it live. So this bit, I prepared early for the height. Very good pre-rest. So just get that in there. So that is lovely jubbly. Tappy tappy. Right. So I'll zip that bad boy in. Stick a few screws in it. I mean, it's a quite cool way of doing it because sometimes it just saves you a bit of wastage and stuff like that, but I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Like I say, worst case scenario, you can still measure it and then drop it onto the floor and cut there. But I like to do it like this. Because cutting it in situ just means you've got to bend down all the time. Because after doing the garden room, you've done a lot of that on the floor, so it's quite nice to work at a bit of height. So, what you're going to do, just put a few bits and pieces in just to keep it nice and in place. Now, we know there's a stud there, obviously, because it's the end of the board. So we just whack a couple in the base. Like that. And you'll see why this can be quite useful in a minute as well. So, obviously we've got an overhang. What we need to do is grab, where did I put it? Should be more prepared. There it is. Plasterboard blade. Get some any retailer. It's very nice. But what I'll do is, I just cut the top. And I'll just follow the line of the steel. Get it to the end. Done. And now I'll bring you to this side. Because it's nice to move around, isn't it? And what we'll do is, we'll grab our standing blade, like this, score down the back, it's impressive, isn't it? So that just saved me putting it on the floor and messing and farting around. What it's also done is though, I've now begun this sort of a return up here. So now I say, you know, that bit's done and the return's there. So say this is a big wall, say this ceiling was a lot higher and you're doing a big area. You put that one bit of plasterboard on, chop across, do that down, snap it off. Well, you've already done that, but you haven't got to do like a little cut and flip and fart around. So yeah, that can be quite a useful thing. Also, when you're cutting plasterboard, you want yourself one of these, little plasterboard rasper, so that you can just straighten up the edges, okay? Like that. All it does is get rid of the knobbly bits. It's not too bad on these edges, but it's very important, like where you cut the ceiling line and stuff like that, where you've got boards that butt up to each other. You need to do that because otherwise, where they're kind of jaggedy after the cut, it just causes the boards to not run quite true and stuff like that. So 2 seconds, it just goes, it flies through it, and it just makes life a bit easier, gives you a bit of a nicer finish, ready for the doors and windows. So there you go, a top tip on plasterboarding and not having to cut everything on the floor. Hey! Alright, look, check that out. That was a nice little time lapse. I worked really fast. And now that you know, and you just saw, we are now 100% plasterboarded. Again, it's not rocket science, it's quite straightforward. Double check measurements, bits and pieces. You'll make the occasional cock up, but don't worry, you're plastering it so you can overcome it. Now, I'm going to clear up the site, and this does bring me to one of those sort of teaching element moments where I kind of go, lots of you would probably love to know how to plaster, okay? And I'm going to try to show you how to do it, but plastering is probably the only thing outside of electrics, which if you've got some basic understanding, you can do that and have it certified by a proper electrician, or speak to an electrician first, and don't attempt it if you don't know what you're doing. But plastering, anyone can have a go at. There's no regulations controlling it, but it's very much one of those things you kind of have to get a feel for it. You have to sort of, I've done it a few times, probably with a mate who knows what he's doing, so you can kind of get a feel for the timings and everything else. So I will try my damnedest to explain this, but if you do it yourself, be aware that if you cock it up, it's a right royal pain in the arse because you have to have it basically replastered over it again. But for all of you who've maybe done a little bit and you're just kind of after a few techniques, stick around because I'm gonna get this taped up and I'll see if I can get the ceiling plastered. So I'll get all this stuff cleared, get my plastering stuff set up, get ready to rock and roll, check what the time is, and then get on some plastering hopefully. Hold on to your seatbelts. No, fasten your seatbelts. Only seatbelts are involved at some stage. I must just say, I've got a slight migraine coming on. So when I started that wall, I knocked back a couple of ibuprofen and I'm starting to kind of feel a bit better, but it just puts my head into a cloudy space. So plastering would be good fun. This should be worth a watch. Right, plastering, here we go. Plastering 101, scrim tape. Like I said earlier, done, so you now can see the joint is taped. If I swing over here, you can see the tape is now turned around the corner and that is nice and tight in that corner there as well. So that's all done. I haven't done the walls yet. I'll do that in a bit because I want to kind of get cracking on the ceiling because I'll have time in between. So, plastering, it kind of is, there's only really one way to do it, but you know, professional plasterers do this all the time. They have different tools and different setups to what I've got. So I can only show you what I do and how I do it. But essentially, I have a lovely little tape. You pick these up from Wix. Now, first off, professional plasterers don't like that edge because, you know, when you're trying to get it and you slide it off, yes, it is a slight pain in the arse, and I keep needing to chop that front bit off, but I haven't. But then I use Stand Hawk, got this from Wix donkeys years ago. A short little trowel, so that'll be the one that I put it on first with, and then the long trowel, which would be the one that I use to finish. One of these builders, just because when you're trying to get out of the bucket, you can sort of scoop it out and get it out nicely. What I also use is a relatively ordinary garden sprayer. I say relatively normal, it is normal. And so once I've kind of working it and I've kind of got to that point where it's starting to set and I need to sort of wet it up a bit, it's easier to spray it than it is to try and flick water out or other ways of doing it. I've got this lovely plasterer's bucket. Lovely little bucket. It feels like a cake show, like a bake-off, and here we have a certain amount of water and my flowers over here. Well, technically, here's my flower, multi-finish, and a big drill for knocking out. You can get professional, like drills specifically designed for this, but I just use that one because it's what I got on the van. That mixer, I've had it for donkey's years. So there's your kind of basic bits and pieces that you're going to need. So if I put you in the bucket, well, not completely, but so you see, got a bit of water just there to start. So what I'll do is I'll record me knocking it up and I'll talk you through the process. So yes, here we go. Teaching plastering. Interesting. Right. So, like I say, I've got a bucket set up ready to go. I'll grab one of these bad boys. I'm not just going to sling all this in there at the first time and just can't be done with it. No, it's not how we do it. Get the top off. Done. And sometimes you've got two people, it's easier because one of you could be stirring it whilst you're pouring it, but at the end of the day, I've done this for donkey's years, it doesn't make a huge difference, just makes it slightly easy sometimes. So, chuck in, right, third of the bag, get the mix up, now have a little mixy mix. Move it out of the way, not that you can see inside the bucket, but still. Start on it. So I want to knock up the whole bag, but you don't want to keep like going too much and sort of end up too sloppy, because you put too much water in, you put the bag in and it kind of gets near the finish, the top, and it's too sloppy, you're kind of buggered. So you want to kind of work it up the bucket as you go. And you want a consistency that kind of is clingy. It will stick onto the hook, you can hold it there, but it's still sloppy. This is what I mean, it's one of those sort of jobs where you get a feel for it the more you do it. And it's just that constant balance, wet v dry, to get your consistency correct. See if I can bring the camera over and show you inside the bouquet as I do it. Because you don't need to watch me doing it, but we're looking at the consistency might be helpful. So you can see, still sloppy. Bucket of a bit more in the bag of plaster, so add a bit of water and then see what I mean? Now we're getting near the top, I want to make sure I'm definitely balancing it, otherwise I end up too sloppy or too firm. Don't get to this stage and think, oh, I just had some more water in, because actually the stuff underneath this is still quite moist, so we're just going to draw this dry stuff into it. Still quite firm. I've got a tiny bit left in the bouquet, so I'll just put a bit more water, stick the rest of the bag in. Lovely jubbly. And now what I've got to do is keep knocking it until it's watery enough or salt, firm enough to where I like it. By the way, you can tell they've figured this bucket out. It takes one bag of multi-finish in there with the water, so they've done their research. Perfect. Now we know we've got the full bag in there. We're at a dry consistency, so now I can just wet it back up again. Remember, you can always add water. You can't subtract it. just grab the builder's trowel. Just scrape it off the sides at the top there, because that's all usually dry stuff that's just stuck to it. Again, all plasters work at different consistencies, what they really like. Some like it a bit sloppier, I like it like that. So you can see, look, it's holding its shape, okay? It's not just oozing off the sides, and it's got a bit of clinginess to it. It doesn't fall off straight away, it kind of wants to hold on. And that is essentially, well, to be fair, that's quite a good mix. I'm really happy with that. So that is it, done and dusted. So what I'll do now is whiz this off. Always keep your plastering tools clean at all times. So just pivot there. Is that you on there? I think so. There you go. Very much like that. And I'll just grab my brush, which I've apparently hidden. Oh no, that's it. So now, just literally make sure you get everything off it, because if you leave it on there to dry, you're not getting it off. You've ruined your mixer and stuff. And what it does with mixers, if it gets loads of stuff dried on one side, it unbalances it. So just spinning, it's kind of doing that constantly, and then it'll just eventually break, because all these welds are quite soft. That's why I'm quite proud. I've had this one for about 8 years. I managed to keep it going. But if you look after tools, they do. So there you go, that's that all cleaned up. So now, let's bring you back inside, because that's what the exciting is stuff. You're gonna find this part either interesting or as dull as the dishwater. But you know, sometimes I find on YouTube people don't actually show you the process of doing stuff. They go, oh, here's the plaster, boom, and then they're plastering. It's like, yes, but how do I knock it up? What consistency? What's happening? And somebody describing the consistency, sometimes it's actually useless. Seeing it is better. So, what we'll do now is use your knees. And this is where your trowel comes in handy again. And all we're going to do is, what's the best side to put you? Is put you up this one. No, actually, you can tell the light, I'm right-handed, what am I thinking? Starting at the front here. Just going to work it out. We can work it out. We can work it out. Get all this onto the table. See, nicely malleable, nicely movable. Still wants to hold its shape a bit, which is fantastic. And you want to get literally all of it out. A, because you've knocked it up and you may as well have it. And B, it makes washing up the bucket that much easier, but it's not still full up with loads of crap. And there you go. There is your plaster, ready to rock and roll. So what I'll do now is I'll clean out the bucket now, because you know you're better off doing it now as opposed to later. Again, because once it dries, it's a pain in the arse. And then we can crack on. So when you're actually doing the job, as it were, you want like a half bucket of water here, just for cleaning up your trowel and stuff like that between sets and bits and pieces. That's basically it. If you can have your room clear, it'll make your life a lot easier. And don't worry, I won't film me plastering the entire set, but I will, but I'll do it in time lapse. So it might be that I kind of break off to like give you bits and pieces. But basically, this one, hook, trowel. Load it up. The top tip, you will get it everywhere, especially if you've not done loads of it. And again, like I say, please don't try this unless you've got the confidence, or do practice place anywhere but in your garden room, because like I say, once it's gone off, there's no going back. So basically what I'll do is, I'll start in a corner and just start cracking on. With new plaster, you don't have to PVA, you can go straight on it. And then what you do is, you just push it onto the surface, make sure it's got a nice bond, so it's actually on there, like that. So you know it's not going to flop off because you haven't bothered pushing it in. There you go. Now I'm going to try and keep it off the wall as much as possible, just to keep it neater, because I won't be doing the walls today, that'll be for Monday. But you want to make sure you get everything, go right in the corners, don't miss any bits, because you only have to go back and do it anyway. And none of this attitude that the decorator will get over it. You know? I'll say right in the corner. And that is all you're doing, you're just working the whole ceiling out. So sometimes speed is of the essence. Now if it's a hot day, then obviously you can have less drying time. Today, it's quite nice, it's sort of in between, there's a bit of a breeze. Ironically, the clouds have just come over, so. And with plastering, it's all about timing. It's just learning to know when you should retouch it again, when you need to leave it, because once I've got this on, I'll go have a cup of tea and chill out for a bit, because there's nothing else you can do while it's sort of, it needs time to actually cure a little bit. You work it again, cure, work it, wet it up. So it's a kind of delicate balancing act. It's a dance. I like that, it's a dance. So there we go, so like I say, keep pushing it in. Across all your joints, like I say, just make sure you're pushing firm enough that you know it's getting adhesion to the ceiling. I do believe technically it's referred to as a scratch coat, because you're starting to build a finish later on, but at this point it's just making sure it's like bonded. So you're not worried about depth too much or anything like that. We can build it up on the second one. Just going across, making sure it's ready to rock and roll. To be fair, sometimes I do put it on a bit thicker now as well, just to kind of get ready for the second one. Finish off this hole, and then I should go to time lapse, you lucky buggers. For you, this is going to go quick. For me, it'll take a minute. Prepare to go at warp speed. I'll see you on the other side. And there you go. First one on. So what I'm going to do now is take the big trout, wet it, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run in both directions, go that way down the building, back that way, and across that way, and that way. And what I'm doing is, because it's like undulated and stuff, where I just got that first one on, this now will help to even out those layers and those levels. And by crossing it, you're hitting it in both directions, which means you're evening it out a lot better, as opposed to just doing it randomly. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll see where we're at. So there you go, that's a cross gone in both directions, so that's just kind of evened it all out a little bit. This isn't a part where you're trying to finish it or anything, you're just trying to, like I say, just even out the undulations. And what it allows you to see is like the areas where it does need thickening up and you're going to need a bit more plaster put into it. But generally speaking, that's an excellent first hit. So that's it. I'm off for a quick cup of tea, let it tack off a bit, let it do its thing, and then, yeah, perfect. Yes, it was a very nice cup of tea. Right, what you also do, so where I've got plaster left over here, bring you back over this way. There you can see that. So I just like to keep it wet, keep it going. So if it starts to dry out, just put a bit of water with it, mix it up, because you want a bit more of a sloppy mix sort of for this stage, because you want to kind of start filling all the imperfections and stuff as we go. So not so sloppy that it's falling off the bloody trail every 2 seconds and making a right old hash of the floor, which will happen, but just enough that you can keep moving with it. So we're basically done with the little one now. That was literally for the application. That can go over there. Pick up the trowel again. Get a lovely little bit. And then starting, as soon as you're there, I'll start over it. Sit in my corner. So all I'm doing at this stage is just going around and straightening out the edges, filling like basically the holes and stuff where we've got like imperfections and indentations. I'm not trying to give it a finish, I'm not trying to make it look pretty at this stage. I'm basically just going around fine surface filling it. And as you drag the trowel over, you'll see there's other areas that kind of need like a bit of filling, so you just get that, put it into little gaps and cracks as you go. So basically building up layers where it needs a bit of extra, and you will drop stuff on the floor, don't worry about it. Just try not to trip it, because then it goes everywhere. See here there's a tape joint, so it just needs filling up and building up. So I'll just work this bit all the way down the line for the moment. Like I say, it's kind of, I can feel that it's obviously still wet, but it's firm enough that I can drag this across without upsetting it. It's ready to accept it, and this is what I mean, trying to teach plastering, it is about feel. And I know for plasterers out there, I'm really oversimplifying this, and there'll be loads of different stuff. I mean, some of the modern trowels you can get now, they're kind of plastics and stuff, they're just really cool. I've got what I've got, I get really good results with it, because I just take my time, but some of the modern stuff you can get will really speed you up. Right, that's looking, that joint's looking nice, which is good. Like I say, you're just working it around now, just filling up all the bits and pieces that need filling. So I'm going to stick you on time lapse. Right, in that time lapse towards the end, you'll see that I sprayed it. Because what it's doing, because it's really, it's a thin coat, because it's new plaster work, so you don't need like a massive coat on it. And two things that will dictate your sort of drying times is the thickness of the plaster and ambient air temperature and water moisture. So obviously, because it's a thin coat, it's on brand new plaster, so it gets drawn in fast, and it's nice temperature outside, but it's not too hot, not too cold. It's drying fast, which is good. But what that means is that as you're sort of trying to trail it on, it becomes a bit draggy and you're sort of fighting it a bit. What spraying it with water does is loosens it up again. It allows the trowel to glide, and as the trowel goes across the surface and picks up more plaster, that top layer of plaster is really soft, quite watery, but it starts to find surface fill everything you do. So as you start to do more and more, you're dragging more, and it really makes it a lovely finish. So you kind of get to that stage where the trowel's fighting on the plaster, and that's when you go, well, just introduce a bit more water to the surface now, and it just slides across it beautifully. And you know, put a bit of water on first, and then you can keep adding to it as you need to, but don't go saturated. And then like it gets to that point where you put so much water in it that it's dripping off, it's on your face, it's in your eyes, you're just like, what the bloody hell was I thinking? So, but yeah, you can see that where it's wet, it's now becoming sort of more of a pasty sort of finish that's on the trail. And that is flipping beautiful because that just pushes straight in to all the imperfections, the little dings, little knocks. See there, getting wet. Getting dry, sorry, not wet, donkey. And you get a nice even consistency when you use the sprayer as well, which is lovely. And there you go, look, see, I don't know if you can see that because it's a wide angle, but you have to take my word for it. That's a lot easier, it's a lot easier to move. It's automatically filling all these little bits and pieces. And the other thing, at this stage as well, I'm pivoting the blade more. So I'm basically using at 45-degree angle, because I'm using the top edge to drag it around with, okay? Again, it's kind of all technique. The other thing you'll notice as well is when you're doing this, especially if you're doing this sort of thing for the first time or you've not done it loads, your neck and your shoulders when you're not used to this sort of work will be murder. Luckily I'm used to it, so it's fine. Oh, don't get me wrong, I'll have a beer tonight just for sake of, just to make sure, you know, for all the swelling and stuff, you know. You can never be too careful. So that is it. I'm just going to keep working it like such. Making sure that we are now working towards a finish. The levels are looking nice as we're going through. Now I'll leave it again for a little bit and then come back and spray it up and then get some more of it moving and lovely jubbly. So there we go. That is it. I'm going to crack on with that. I'm going to put you back on time lapse. Right, so that's me gone over it a couple of times. So you can see now that it doesn't dent or anything when you're sort of touching it, it's nice. See that little lumpy bit there? I can just run my finger through that nicely and just smooth it off. So it's now ready to final little fill, see all these bits and pieces. So what I'll do now is, I'll get a little bit of the knocky wetty up stuff on the big trowel, spray sort of a square area, and essentially start to finish that one section using the sloppy stuff to fill all those little imperfections, even out all these little bits and pieces as we go. And that'll pretty much be it. So this is the final push, but like the final frontier. You're welcome, Lee. So there we go. I shall now do that, put you on to time lapse, and I'll crack on. Right, dokie, I can't move my neck anymore, my shoulder's locked, but I've got a bloody lovely ceiling. So there you go, I don't know if they can see that. All those different colours and bits and pieces. See, that looks a bit rough there, but it actually isn't, it's just the way the light's hitting it. It's absolutely smooth as a button. Well, I suppose you get rough buttons. Well, mine's as smooth as a very, very smooth button. So, look, all the edges nicely finished. Happy days. So that's it for today. That's all I can really do. Oh, except for I will quickly scrim tape these joints, and then that is it. I'm unfortunately not in tomorrow. Oh, not on this job anyway. I am shooting a wedding with my lovely wife, so I actually shoot weddings as well. I know, you didn't know that, did you? So there you go. So I'm a photographer as well. I've been doing that for donkey's years. So she's full-time, and when there's a wedding that needs to be shot, I go help her. So yeah, really excited. Love shooting weddings. They're such good fun. But anyway, so that'll give us a chance to dry. So I'll be back on Monday, where I shall then be basically plastering the rest of these walls, because they ain't gonna plaster themselves. And that's it. So you may miss me tomorrow, but it doesn't matter. Leave a comment, I'll get back to you. If you like what you're seeing, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. There's loads more tips and tricks coming. Even when I'm doing the same thing, again, I will end up saying it in a different way, or I might have learned a little something. So things are always constantly moving and changing. So yeah, but wherever you're up to, have a fantastic one. I'll see you again soon, guys. Bye.